Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course on medical law. This lecture will be about law governing organ transplantation. The concepts covered in this lecture are organ transplantation, regulation of organ transplantation in India, framework of the legislation in India, the institutional mechanism under the organ transplantation regulation in India, the penalties prescribed under the law. The keywords of this lecture can be seen here. They are organ transplantation, donor, recipient, informed consent and brainstem death. Organ transplantation stands as a remarkable achievement in the realm of medical science and technology. The term transplantation in medical terminology signifies the procedure wherein a segment or entire organ is extracted from human body and then transplanted into another human body. Organ transplantation addresses the crucial issue for individuals experiencing organ failure, providing them a new chance to lead a healthier life. Organ transplantation is a remarkable development in the field of medical science. It is now considered as the ray of hope for many individuals who are affected with terminal illness. Early transplantations faced a major hurdle in immunologically mediated graft rejection. Advancements in understanding transplant immunology have contributed to overcoming the rejection challenges. The discovery of potent immunosuppressive drugs have played a key role in improving the transplant outcomes. Overall, these developments have significantly improved the results of organ transplantation to save lives. Acceptance of brain death concept expanded organ availability, enabling transplants which were not earlier feasible. Despite its benefits, many families found it challenging to accept brain death in the face of tragic loss. This difficulty in acceptance led to a persistent gap between demand for organs and their availability through legal means. The gap between organ need and availability persisted due to emotional challenges associated with acknowledging brain death in the context of a tragic loss. Organ transplantation in India has a comparatively shorter history compared to developed countries, with the first kidney transplant performed in early 1970s. Transplant activities gained momentum in 80s and 90s, initially focusing on live donor kidney transplants in urban areas. The expansion of kidney transplantation was gradual, facilitated by establishment of new clinics and availability of trained medical staff. The surge in kidney transplantation activities, especially in the 1980s, gave rise to infamous kidney trait, attracting widespread media attention. To address the issue of organ trafficking and to ensure fair allocation of organs, most countries have enacted regulatory mechanisms. In India also, the Transplantation of Human Organs Act was introduced in the year 1994. The key objective of the Transplantation of Human Organs Act is to prevent the commercial trade in organs and penalize illegal transplants. In 2011, several amendments were introduced to the 1994 legislation in order to strengthen the implementation framework. The most important aspect of this legislation is that it legalized brainstem death as death, allowing organs to be retrieved from brainstem dead patients. Other important aspects of the legislation are regulation of removal of organs for transplantation from cadaver donors, regulation of removal of organs from living donors, regulation of hospitals, regulation of medical practitioners, punishment for those flouting the provisions of the legislation. So, in general, the legislation introduced a regulatory mechanism which completely controls the transplantation of human organs in India. It also provides for regulation of various stakeholders involved in the process of organ transplantation. When we analyze the Act, we have to start from Section 2D, which defines brainstem death. Brainstem death means the stage at which all functions of brainstem have permanently and irreversibly ceased and certified by either the registered medical practitioner in charge of the hospital, an independent registered medical practitioner being a specialist to be nominated from among the panel of names approved by appropriate authority, a neurologist or neurosurgeon nominated from the panel of names approved by appropriate authority. So, in order to make sure that there is brainstem death happen to a person, it must be confirmed and certified by these persons given under Section 2D of the Act. Section 2E defines a deceased person. A deceased person means a person in whom permanent disappearance of all evidence of life occurs by reason of brainstem death or in a cardiopulmonary sense at any time after live birth have taken place. Donor means a person not less than 18 years of age who voluntarily authorizes the removal of any of his organs for therapeutic purposes. Human organ means any part of human body consisting of a structured arrangement of tissues that, if wholly removed, cannot be replicated by the body itself. So, transplantation under the Act can happen either from a deceased person who is defined under Section 2E or from a donor who has consented for the transplantation, which is defined under Section 2F of the Act. Human organ, as you have already seen, is defined in Section 2H. Section 2I defines a near relative. A near relative means a spouse, son, father, daughter, mother, brother, sister, grandfather, grandmother, grandson or granddaughter. So, near relative is a person who is eligible to give consent for organ transplantation, especially in case of deceased patients. Section 2M defines the word recipient. Recipient means a person into whom or human organ or tissue or both is or is proposed to be transplanted. Transplantation means grafting of any human organ from any living person to a deceased person or to some other living person for therapeutic purposes. So, transplantation means grafting of human organ from one human body to another. Section 3 is another important provision in the regulatory framework. Under Section 3, any person can at any time before his death authorize in writing and in presence of two or more witnesses the removal of any organ from his body after his death. In the event a person did not make such authorization before his death, the person who is lawfully in possession of his dead body, that is, such person can authorize transplantation of human organ unless he has a reason to believe that any near relative of the deceased person will have an objection to the same. The Act does not provide for presumed consent of organ donation from a deceased person, but instead requires informed consent by the donor or person who is lawfully in possession of a dead body. So, under the legislation, informed consent is mandatory for the purpose of organ transplantation. So, if it is from a living donor, the living donor himself has to give the consent. But if the donor is deceased, then the near relative can give the consent, but no other near relative should have an objection to the donation. As per section 3(4) of the Act, only a registered medical practitioner can remove a organ from a human body and can conduct transplantation only in a hospital registered under the provisions of the Act. A registered medical practitioner means a medical practitioner who possesses a recognized medical qualification as defined in the Indian Medical Council Act. In case of cadaver donation, the registered medical practitioner has to satisfy himself that the donor has been certified brain stem dead. In the case of living donation, the registered medical practitioner has to explain all possible effects, the hazards connected with the removal and transplantation to the donor and the recipient. As per section 5 of the Act, if a dead body is lying unclaimed in a hospital or prison and is not claimed by a near relative within 48 hours of the death, the person in charge of management or control of the hospital or a prison can authorize the removal of any organ or tissue from a human body. So, this is one such scenario where a consent is not given by the donor or any near relative, but transplantation can occur. So, this can occur in case of a dead body which is lying unclaimed in a hospital or in a prison. So, there is no near relative who is claiming the dead body within 48 hours of death. So, in such case, a person who is in charge of management or control of the hospital or the prison can authorize organ transplantation. Section 9 of the Act regulates living donation. The Act provides separate procedure for living donation by near relatives and living donation by an unrelated donor. In case of living donation by near relatives, an application in Form 1 or 2 along with Form 11 of the Transplantation of Human Organs and Tissues Rules 2014 is required to be submitted to the competent authority. The application is directed to the competent authority, which could be the hospital's head or the hospital's authorization committee, which is formed by the hospital. The committee then interviews the recipient, donor and other relatives, and if satisfied, gives approval for transplantation. The entire interview procedure is recorded on video for documentation and to ensure transparency. In case of Dr. Khaja Moinuddin versus Authorization Committee, which is a 2023 judgment, the Madras High Court authorized the non-related donor to donate organs and also observed that transplant from non-relative donors is contemplated under section 9(3) of the Act. Thus, refusal by hospitals to perform transplants concerning unrelated donors will be illegal. So, we have to understand that donation of organs from relatives is always encouraged by hospital establishments in order to avoid legal hassles. But at the same time, the Act contemplates both donations from related and unrelated donors. So, there is no prohibition on donation of an organ from a non-relative. But however, it has to be ensured that the donation of organ is happening in a transparent and legal manner. Regulation of hospitals and human organ retrieval centers. Section 10 and Section 14 of the Act provide that no hospital or human organ retrieval center shall commence any activity relating to removal, storage or transplantation of human organ or tissue unless such hospital is registered under the Act. For registration of a hospital as a transplant center under the Act, the hospital is required to be in a position to provide such specialized services and facilities and possess the skilled manpower and equipment and maintain such standards as prescribed from time to time. So, the legal regulations ensures that human organ transplantation can happen only in a hospital which is registered under the provisions of the Act. In order to be eligible for registration, the hospital has to fulfill some prescribed criteria and possess specialized services and facilities and manpower and equipment meeting the standards prescribed from time to time. Every hospital shall file an application for registration before the appropriate authority as specified in rules. For registration of a hospital as a human organ retrieval center under the Act, the hospital is required to have an intensive care unit facility along with manpower, infrastructure and equipment as required by the rules. After inspection, permission is given in the format prescribed in the rules. The registration once given will be valid for a period of 5 years. Section 13 of the Act provides for establishment of an appropriate authority for each union territory. The appointment will be done by the central government, and for each state the appropriate authority will be established by the state government. The functions of the appropriate authority will be: 1. To grant registration, 2nd. To suspend and cancel registration, 3rd. To enforce standards prescribed under the law, 4th. To investigate any complaints regarding breach of any provision of the Act, and 5th. To inspect hospitals periodically to examine the quality of transplantation. Thus, under the law, there has to be an appropriate authority in every union territory and states. In union territories, the appointments will be done by the central government, whereas in states, it will be done by the state government. The authorities are empowered to implement the provisions of this Act. Now, let us see the powers of the appropriate authority. The appropriate authority shall have powers of a civil court which is trying a suit under the Code of Civil Procedure. This includes summoning any person who is in possession of any information relating to the violation of any provisions of the Act, discovery and production of any document, and issual of search warrants. Under Section 13C, National Human Organs and Tissue Removal and Storage Network has to be established. The central government may establish a storage network at one or more places, such as National Organ Tissue Transplant Organization, Regional Organ and Tissue Transplant Organization, State Organ and Tissue Transplant Organization. Section 13D also provides for establishment of a national registry. Under the law, the central government shall maintain a national registry of the donors and recipients of human organs and tissues. Now, let us see the offences and penalties under this legislation. Section 18 provides for punishment for removal of a human organ without authority. If any person helps in any manner in the removal of any organ without authority, he shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 10 years and with fine which may extend to 20 lakh rupees. Where a person is convicted who is also a medical practitioner, then his name shall be removed from the council for a period of 3 years for the first offence and permanently for the subsequent offence. Any person who helps in any manner in the removal of human tissue without authority shall be punished with imprisonment for a term up to 3 years and with a fine up to 5 lakh rupees. Section 19 provides the punishment for commercial dealings in human organs. Whoever makes or receives any payment for the supply or offer to supply or make any arrangement or take part in any arrangement with regard to any commercial transaction dealing with human organs or makes any advertisement for the supply of any human organ shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 5 years and which may extend to 10 years and shall also be liable to pay a fine up to 20 lakh rupees, which can also extend to 1 crore. Section 22 deals with cognizance of offences. The court shall take cognizance of the offence under the Act only when a complaint is filed by appropriate authority or any person authorized by the central government or the state government or a person who has given a notice of not less than 60 days to the appropriate authority, and cognizance shall not be taken by any court which is lower than judicial magistrate of first class. The Punjab High Court in Ajay Mittal and others versus Union of India, which is a 2022 decision, upheld the petitions for transplant between non-relatives. In this case, the court held that loss of human life should not be permitted merely at the altar of technicalities, and more so when the possibility of commercial transaction in such swapping has been completely ruled out. Similarly, Delhi High Court in Aditi Goswami versus Government of NCT Delhi, which is also a 2022 decision, observed that the difference in the financial position of donor and recipient in organ transplant is not strong enough to establish a commercial element. So, in these cases we have seen that the courts have also evaluated the facts and circumstances in different cases and tried to help the patients who are in need of organ transplantation. To conclude, the development of organ transplantation stands as a remarkable achievement for mankind. Despite its success, the accessibility of this treatment option remains unequal. In the current states of organ donation in India, the benefits are predominantly availed by affluent, catering to only a small fraction of patients. Lack of awareness among the general population, the low results in finding a match due to inefficient data management, all are causing hurdles for organ transplantation. However, the effective implementation of rules and regulations is expected to result in a more conducive atmosphere for legal and ethical organ transplantation in India. The references of this lecture can be seen here. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture. I hope you are enjoying the course.